Welcome to the CareerMetis Podcast. I'm your host, Nisar Ahmed. I'm the founder and editor of the blog, CareerMetis.com. This is episode 4 of the podcast, and this particular episode today is part of the A Day in the Life of series. So in each of these particular episodes, I will be conducting interviews with individuals from a particular career. I'm creating this because for anyone looking to get into a particular field or job or industry, there are always unanswered questions. Questions about what is required to get into that particular job, what does a typical day look like, what does an ideal career look like, what are some of the things to watch out for, etc., etc. After listening to these episodes, you, the listener, will get a clearer idea on a particular job or career. And for today's episode, I'm speaking with a professional photographer, and our guest's name is Kyle Dowie. Just a quick epilogue before we get into the interview. Kyle will be sharing his experience as a professional photographer, how he got started in photography, where he stands today, some of the benefits, some of the challenges of the career itself. But what I also loved about doing this interview with Kyle, he shared some amazing career tips, or I should say life tips, which will benefit people from all walks of life. So let's now listen to the interview I conducted with Kyle Dowie about a day in the life of a professional photographer. Hey Kyle, welcome to the CareerMetis Podcast. How are you doing today?
Doing very well. How are you?
I am doing great. Thanks. Kyle, your business is Kyle Dowie Photography, right?
That's right.
Right. And it is, before we get into a day in the life of a professional photographer, I wanted to ask you something. I was seeing a documentary many years ago. You saw, this was the Eastman Kodak era, going back 100 years. Then it became the digital, before the digital camera, the Polaroid cameras, then the digital camera, and now you have the cell phones. So I find it's very interesting that photographers are inundated with a lot of innovation. So how does someone like you keep up with that?
I guess really just keep your ear to the ground. I mean, it definitely helps having a lot of friends who are photographers. But I came in to photography at the end. I wouldn't say the end, but I think the digital cameras really came in. I remember when the Canon 5D came out, and that sort of revolutionized things, and that was 2008. 5D Mark II, I think. That was sort of the first one that did video. But I remember doing photography in high school, and that was still film, and that was 2009. But I still have friends that are shooting film. Me myself, I'm strictly digital, but I do own a Polaroid camera.
That's great. And do you think Polaroids will make a comeback mainstream? You know how vinyl is making a comeback with music?
I think they definitely have. I think it's a smaller market, but when I have friends come over and they sort of see the Polaroids, they definitely freak out a little bit because they do have this very interesting look to them that you can only really get from a Polaroid, and just having it sort of physically in your hands within minutes is I think really great.
No, that's wonderful. So Kyle, before we begin, I wanted to mention that as a segue, because you know what, when I think of photography, there's so many changes compared to a lot of the other industries. But before we begin, I wanted to ask, I think before me doing an introduction, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who
Hmm.
Kyle Dowie is? Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess if you were to give me a title, I guess I'd be considered a professional photographer. It's what I'm doing right now. I've been doing it since I don't know, say 2011, 2010. I got my first camera. Um, and yeah, sort of just been doing it as a hobby ever since, and then just sort of decided recently about six months ago to really take it into my own hands after realizing there was definitely room for potential, and it was something that I'd really come to love, and yeah, I mean, living downtown Toronto now, from the suburbs. So I grew up playing hockey and lacrosse. I come from a sort of a competitive sports background. My dad grew up playing, um, yeah, professional hockey, semi-professional hockey. He's a goalie, so very very familiar with that world. And when I first got into the photography world, it was sort of indirectly through the performing arts world. Um, and that was really interesting to me. It was this whole world of people and ideas that I'd just not been exposed to at all in my entire life, and that really interested me, especially because at the time I was really looking for what I was going to do with my life, where I was going to go, was I going to go to school, wasn't I? Um, and it was really interesting to me to come across photography and videography at the time that I did.
Oh, that's an interesting transition, right? I think you would be one of the fortunate few because a lot of people have hobbies, they have work, they don't
Mhm.
necessarily match together. What you
Mhm.
have been able to do is you have been able to take something that was once a hobby, you loved it. Now it's a full-time profession. So that's kudos to you.
Mhm. Oh, thank you.
So one thing I'm sure I have a question, and anybody listening to this, in case their ambition is to become a professional photographer, what does a
Mhm.
day to day look like?
I mean, it really depends. I mean, starting with what kind of photographer you are. There's so many different mediums. I should say mediums. So many different genres of you can get involved with. So, I mean, there's some people who strictly make their living in the summers. I'm from weddings, and that's a weekend job most of the time on a Sunday. Myself, I mean, right now I'm mostly engaged in portrait work, which I mean, for me, since it's a very new thing to me, it's a lot of time is sort of spent marketing yourself, going to networking events, shooting as much as I can, um, and when a shoot comes along, just really doing the absolute best you can to make sure it's a great experience and the product is great, and from there it's really just a matter of people marketing for you in a way, through the quality of your work, right? It's very hard, to not. It's hard to survive as a photographer without the work itself being good. It's one thing I've really noticed. The more the work improves, the more work I get. It's really straightforward in that way.
Hmm.
Obviously, um, having personal and social skills helps. It's definitely a benefit, and that's something I also try to work on a daily basis. So I mean, day to day can really change. It's always sort of it's always changing, and sort of learning to adapt. I mean, some days you'll have absolutely nothing, or some days you'll have a nonstop 8 hours, and you'll go and do that, right?
And You mentioned a nonstop 8 hours, and that brings up when we are trying to schedule this call. I got a message from you, I think 12 a.m. in the night last night. So that just shows that this is not compared to any other profession. You could be working any time, right? Because it's not necessarily a set schedule. It's the schedule of the project.
Exactly. I mean, it's that's what's sort of great about being able to set your own schedule. Whether you're an entrepreneur, or, I mean, businessman, or you're in sales, or you're a photographer. I mean, you're into marketing. If you're self-employed, you can sort of set your own schedule. And obviously, 9 to 5 is still the standard work hours. But outside of that, you can also sort of operate on your own terms. Be it at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Friday night.
That makes sense. I mean, because it depends on the projects, as you mentioned, right? Like the schedule, but it gives you a flexibility in your schedule what you want to do when you want to do. So I think if someone is that type of individual, I think most of us like flexibility, and if that is the case, then sounds like a great profession in that regard.
Definitely.
You already mentioned that in the beginning that when you tried this out as a hobby, you loved the entire you loved this, and that's why you made it a full-time career. But if there are few things, let's say 2 or 3 things that you are there 2 or 3 things that you truly enjoy about the role of being a professional photographer?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, it's such a loaded term, finding your passion. That sentence seems to really dominate our culture. For me, it was something that was built over time. I mean, it wasn't when I first picked up a camera. It was sort of this thing I'm going to do. It was over time of doing it that I think I really discovered. You sort of discover your love for something. You spend time with it, and you sort of nurture your skills and figure out what's new with it, what's old, where did it start, and the passion sort of develops over time. I mean, when I first picked up a camera, I literally knew nothing, and then the first thing I did, me and a friend of mine, we shot a short film, and no idea at all what we were doing, and I had not edited anything at that point in my life, and it was we just sort of went and did it. And that was, it was an amazing thing that you could just sort of pick up a camera and go out and do something. So I think that element of being able to create something really intrigued me. Because it was something I'm not used to. At that point, especially, it was the majority of what I did was either in a classroom or it was in a hockey rink or lacrosse, playing lacrosse. This ability to go take a picture or make a short film. It was so freeing. Even if they definitely did suck at that time because it was very early. But it felt like what we were doing was great. It felt like that we were sort of achieving something, and just this form of expression. And it still is that way to this day. That feeling of getting a camera in my hands and being able to create something on a day-to-day basis, right, is really great. And then just the visual element itself. I mean. You can see it nowadays with Instagram and Snapchat. I mean, it's definitely a visual realm that we're living in now, and it's incredible. It's definitely incredible, and I've really come to try to understand that part in us that is sort of attracted to the image and and trying to understand what about it it is that attracts us to that. And it's definitely something I've sort of spent a lot of time trying to understand. And, something like Instagram is really great for that. You're sort of getting direct feedback on a daily basis. I mean, you can post an image and be it a selfie you took at a Starbucks, or, an image you slaved over, or a painting. It's sort of this direct communication. So it's unbelievable.
Yes, technology has definitely changed a lot of that, right? It has just, it's just, there are many tools out there that I think visual, it's become really truly visual world. Everything is visual. Like whether you're a business or you're an individual, you need some type of a visual presence, Instagram, Facebook. So those are good points. And if you're someone who enjoys that, then yeah, this is like a great career. Kyle, I think you already answered this question slightly, but maybe you can expand on this. How does one go about becoming a professional photographer? How does one get started? What do they need?
Really, you can get started with a camera, with a cell phone. You probably see it all over the city. The Apple iPhone pictures that Apple posts up everywhere. All of them sort of taken with their phones, and some of the stuff that people can create are it's incredible. Really, I guess the only thing is just sort of getting a camera and just shooting. That was sort of the best advice I ever got, was just to stop sort of talking about it and just sort of go out and shoot. It's really the only way to get better. And then after that, there's definitely little things that you probably know depending upon which form of photography you get into. There seems to be a very big street photography world that's sprung up after Instagram. It was definitely always there, but I think it's bigger than ever. You're seeing a lot of incredible photographers that literally spend every single day on the streets, and now they're, because of their Instagram following, they're working with mass brands, and that's their day to day. And so across the board, whether you're in fashion or portraits or beauty or street photography, I think the one thing is just getting out and shooting as much as possible. And then after that, definitely hanging around people that are better than you is really something you can't go wrong with, because it will always push you, always, to be better.
I think it's having the right circle, right? I think there's always having the right peers who motivate you to become better. That makes sense. Now, you mentioned about the things that people love, that you love, and some of the things that you look forward to doing every day. Every job, I'm assuming, and I'm making a guess here, the photography career or business also has its own challenges. So, first of all, that's my question to you. Are there challenges, and if there are, what would those challenges be? Like, what are some of the hurdles or challenges that one has to pay attention to?
Yeah. Oh gosh, where to begin? I think as a business, if you're going to operate as a sort of your own mini corporation, just sort of being that, I think confidence is really the biggest thing. A lot of people are going to say no. It's going to be a regular thing. Cold calling every single day, and the self-discipline within that, being self-employed. you could obviously be a journalist, photographer, and be working for a magazine or be working for a newspaper, and yeah, you're not working for yourself in the same way someone who has their own portrait business is sort of operating. But if you're someone that does have your own business, I mean, it is sort of every day. If there's no shoots next week, you sort of have a job to do. It's you're waking up, you're making cold calls, you're talking to businesses, doing whatever you can to fill your schedule. Because if it's not there, I mean, there's no money coming in, right? So that's probably the first challenge that I deal with is cold calling and sort of staying ahead of my schedule, and making sure that I'm constantly sort of putting myself into situations or environments that's going to allow me to meet new people, book new clients, whatever I can. So I'd say that's probably the biggest challenge. And after that, I mean, it's like you said, I mean, staying on top of the different techniques and technology that's out there, and seeing if you could implement it in some way, be it to your workflow or, to the actual photography itself. Because if it's something that's going to help your business grow, or it's going to sort of add another element to your portfolio, I mean, it's definitely going to directly benefit you, be it through new clients or, just an overall better portfolio.
Wow, it's interesting you mentioned cold calling, and I mean, it does take a lot of courage to do something like that. It is scary, but thanks for being honest here, right? I in my full-time profession, I work in sales, and yes, I do cold calling, but that is what people like me have signed up for, right? So getting into sales, you have to do cold calling, but I would have not imagined, to be honest, like being a professional photographer or even a business owner, not a lot of people think about it. So it is scary. So kudos to you for getting out there, and I had to say it takes a lot of courage. So kudos and congrats to you for doing that.
Man, thank you. It's definitely an interesting part. Like you say, it doesn't really matter what job you're in. Cold calling seems to be a part of many different jobs, and it is. I mean, you've probably talked to many people, I imagine, who say the same thing. It's not the easiest part of the job. I mean, it doesn't. I don't think it doesn't matter whether you're working for a company or you're in business for yourself. You're still really selling yourself. Every call, right? And chances are a lot of those calls are going to be no's. It's just the averages aren't on your side. But I remember coming across something. A quote one time, I think it might have been by a photographer, and you might call 10 people or 10 businesses and sort of offer your services in some way, shape, or form, and your goal might be to book all 10, but you don't need all 10. You just need the one, right? And I didn't understand that at first, but
true.
You get that one client. You do a good job, and they tell 5 people they know, and before you know it, you have 3 people who called you that were friends with that client and they recommended you, and it's just you only really need that first client, right? And there's obviously the chance that you won't get any business from directly from a client, but that's typically how it's happened in my world. Just focus on getting that one client, and then from there build off that. Not trying to get down just because you made 10 calls and 9 of them said no.
Yeah, that's a great advice, right? And anybody listening to this, this is, I think that this advice you just gave draws a parallel to any career, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is an element of risk, there is an element of failure, no matter what you do. Let's say even someone is just applying for a job. I've been there as well when I was starting out. You get a sense of, you apply for 10 jobs, you assume or you think 10 people will call you. But you're right. You don't need 10 companies to call you. Even if one of them gives you a call when you're applying for a job, and the same thing with business. I don't think you want all 10 ideally to buy from you, but as you said, that mindset of, what, all I need is one, and I'll do a very good job with that one, and my work will speak for itself. They'll keep referring. Now, when anybody gives you a referral, the relationship is already there. You don't need to necessarily start establishing yourself. You come and recommended, so you get that advantage over there. So what he just said, I know it applies to your business, but I think it's a great advice for anybody listening, for any career, any job. I think it's like a great life advice, I would say.
Yeah, it's this weird sort of, it's got this sort of Zen element to it of just sort of focus on the one you're dealing with now, right? Because it's so, you get 5 rejections in a row. It's easy to just sort of get into the mindset of, well, the next 5 are definitely going to be no's too, but it's just not the case. Just focus on the one you're dealing with right now, and how can you sort of help them, be it through, the product you're selling, or the service you're selling, right? How can what you're doing benefit their life, and if you can focus on that, I think the chances go up infinitely of you landing them as a client or as a customer.
Absolutely. So, Kyle, we are coming very close to the 30-minute mark, and I want to ask you one last question.
Sure.
What advice will you give to someone who wants to get into this field?
Oh gosh, I'd say probably just to shoot as often as possible. That's really probably the best advice I could give. Be it out on the street, or be it with your friends. I'm still every day trying to. I'm always, my friends will probably tell you, I'm always asking people to come in and do a shoot, and those are free shoots, right? I make $0 off of that, but it's new images to my portfolio. It's an opportunity to sort of try new things, and I can write a blog post about it. I can sort of share it, and so that's probably the biggest thing is just shooting as often as possible. I remember a friend of mine, would just go, like, didn't have any models and didn't have any really immediate friends that were interested in modeling for him. But one of the things that he did was just go out on the street. There's especially downtown. In the summer, how many people are you walking past every day? And he would just sort of go up to people and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, and I'm a photographer. I think you got a really interesting look. Can I take a photo? And that was it, right? So, and
wow.
Started building a portfolio that way, right? So there's really no right way to do it except to just keep shooting. That's probably the best advice, and it's advice that I constantly tell myself every day, because it's the only way I'm going to get better. The only way anyone's going to get better.
Oh, that's definitely great advice. Your story, cold calling, and your friend talking to strangers. It does take a lot of courage. And not everybody wants to do it, but if you want to be successful, if you want to build a career, a business, I think that is definitely an avenue that will help. And one thing I would like to add, if I may, is if you believe in what you're doing and if you think you're really good, I think and all you need is courage, and I think people can sense that and they will help you out. Most people are really helpful. That's what I find. And they may not come across as friendly, but when you talk to them, they do want to help. Most people are nice in that regard. So that's
definitely
great. I mean, yeah, that's
definitely
really great to hear your friend doing that. So
yeah.
So Kyle, yeah, thanks very much for spending time here. I learned a lot. I know this. We've tried to focus on professional photography. I think I've learned what is involved, what a day-to-day looks like. Someone listening to this is learning as well. But on top of that, you've given some great life advice, success advice, career advice. So thanks for that. So thanks for joining.
I tried my best.
And before I let you go, if after listening to this, people want to get in touch with you, what is the best way to reach Kyle?
Probably either, on my site, www.kyledowie.com. One of the main ways, Facebook, Kyle Dowie Photography, Instagram, it's KY and then Dowie, so Kai Dowie. I also sort of have sort of a street photography account as well, which is Dowser, so DOWZR. So any of those three, I'm probably just a click away, as is anyone these days.
No, thanks for that. So what I will do is, along with this recording, in the blog post, I'll add a link to everything. So in case someone listens, they can just automatically go there. So yeah, definitely, I'll put all the links to all the websites and Instagram page you just mentioned. So Kyle,
cool.
Thanks for joining. Thanks for your advice. It was a pleasure talking to you.
I
learned a lot. Thanks, folks, for listening to this episode of A Day in the Life of a Professional Photographer. I have written a brief summary of the interview with links to Kyle's website and Instagram page as part of a blog post on my website. If you liked what you heard, feel free to subscribe to the CareerMetis Podcast on iTunes. And for more content, ideas, tips, resources, go to CareerMetis.com. If you enjoyed the episode and also learned something new, feel free to post a comment or a review. And if you really loved it, definitely go ahead and share the episode with your friends, family, and all your social media profiles and feeds. Until next time, this is Nisar Ahmed, your host for the CareerMetis Podcast. Thank you.